Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. So we've officially wrapped up our first month in London. It really was a dream come true for both of us because we'd been there before for just a very short time, always wanted to go back, always wanted to experience what it was like to actually live there, not just visit for a long weekend or, part of a European trip. This was our home for the month of January. So it's now over and we're really kind of sad about it, to be honest with you, but there are new adventures ahead, which you will definitely be seeing on the channel. If you guys are not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when we have new videos out. And if you missed any of the London content, it's all going to be up there on the channel, so just go and check it out at any time. We really did have a good time there. It's like a weird feeling going to the next adventure and being excited about that, but also having this feeling in the back of your mind like, that London month was amazing and now it's in the past. So in this video today, we're gonna wrap up officially the month of London by kind of going through a Q&A session just to talk about what we noticed while we were there, how it differed from our expectations, all of those kind of things. So we're gonna start off with the weather. We were prepared for constant rain. That's like what everyone told us. We were constantly checking the weather app, especially when we were getting closer to leaving, to see what it was gonna be like. There was 10 or 11 straight days of rain in the forecast right before we were gonna leave. But when we got there, first 5 or 6 days, absolutely beautiful weather. I think we had one rainy morning, and then it was just blue skies. Then the next week came, like another full week of blue skies and like 40 to 50 degree weather, really, really pleasant. So then they're like, okay, this is weird. We're either just getting incredibly lucky or London has changed the climate in the past 2 or 3 years. Overall, like through the whole month, we had 3 days when it rained. The rain did not affect in any way what we were able to do, and I do think we just kind of got lucky. January 2022, to be specific, but January in England was very pleasant and it was just an amazing month. It never got in our way.
So on the packing front of things, we both had a pair of rain boots, 2 rain jackets, and we brought 2 umbrellas. Now if I had to do it all over again, I would pack the boots, I would pack the rain jackets, but I would leave the umbrellas at home. We didn't use them once. No real need for an umbrella if you've got a great rain jacket.
I don't know what it's gonna be like next year in January, so I don't wanna say that that's just like what it's like always, but at least for us, we got very lucky in that front.
Our first question, what was surprising about living in London? I guess I didn't realize how international the city actually was. There's literally people all over the world living in London. And you can see that on the streets, you can see that in the shops and the restaurants that are all around the city. So multicultural. It's not to say that it's not English, but I was just surprised about how many different types of people we saw on a daily basis.
I think usually when you go to another country and you go to the main city, like you are gonna see a little aspect of that. It's not all gonna be people from that country. It's gonna have an international flair to it, but in London, it's way more than a flair. Like you can just instantly tell people from all over the world, this is not really England. It's truly a melting pot. So I would say overall, my biggest surprise was just how chill everything felt in the city. I mean, I think when you think about a major city like London, you think about like the hustle and bustle, and it's very hectic and everyone's got somewhere to be and people are kind of rude. And I just didn't really feel like that in London. I mean, there were definitely parts of the city that felt like that, but it wasn't all over the city.
It never felt overwhelming.
It just always felt like manageable. And also like just how people would treat you. I think that it was always very friendly, and if you looked like you had a question about something or if you looked like you didn't really know where you were going, like people would always help you without even really asking. That whole kind of stereotype of like British people being very rude and keeping to themselves, I didn't really feel that way when I was interacting with locals.
Okay, next question. What is a tourist attraction that is worth your time?
I would say Tower Bridge, because when you're around that area, like there's so much to see. It's not just the bridge itself. I definitely recommend like walking over the bridge so you can kind of look down the river both ways. But you also have the Tower of London right next to it, which is this really old medieval castle that's right on the bank of the river, that's from the 11th century, and it's just this weird, like it's just sitting there in the middle of this like very modern city. So that's cool to kind of walk around. And then when you get to the other side of the bridge, there's kind of just this whole area. There's a galleria, there's a lot of like restaurants and street food and stuff.
Great place to take a photo.
Yeah, you can take a photo of the bridge or of yourselves with the bridge in the background from like all these different angles. It's definitely not like the oldest or most historic thing in London. It was built in 1894, so it's still pretty recent as far as like London terms. but it's just so striking and it's so cool, especially at night when they light it up. Definitely worth it.
It's like one of the most iconic things you could see in London, and it's free. I think one of the tourist attractions that is worth your time is definitely to visit Borough Market. It's one of hundreds of markets in that city, and it's one of the popular ones. I mean, before we went to London, we really only knew about Borough Market and Camden Market, but there are so many others that we discovered.
Definitely wouldn't stop at one market. There's just so many different ones, so I would plan on, if you have enough time, plan on eating lunch a couple different days, because that's like one of the defining things of the city, I think, is just that kind of culture. Like, you go somewhere to try a couple different things. Yeah, Borough Market's cool because it's kind of hidden. When you walk in, you're going down like a stairwell, and then it's like underneath like a bridge where a train goes over. So it's very unassuming from like the outside, but then you get in there and they just have like everything you can imagine.
I think Borough Market is a perfect clash between having street food and also having like a farmer's market with whole foods and cheeses and other knick-knacky things like that. So they've got the best of both worlds. What was your favorite pub?
That's actually really hard. I think you have to go with the Mayflower. We did an entire video on it. It's just like this very historic place, besides having really good food and just a cool pub atmosphere. I would definitely say the Mayflower. It's the whole area around it too. Like, it really feels like you were just kind of transported back to the 16th century, because all of the streets are still like oil lamps and cobblestone. It's like right up on the bank of the river, a little bit further down from Tower Bridge. So you do have to go on the London Overground to get there. Amazing. Like, it's everything you'd want in like a very old London pub.
The Mayflower is my favorite pub too. There's a ton of great pubs within the city center, but I would challenge you to go a little bit east, west, north, south, away from kind of the main area. Get off the beaten path and find these little cozy pubs.
The one thing that is very British and that they absolutely nail is the pubs. It feels like you're on the seaside, you're getting some fish and chips, you're getting some mushy peas. Like, they all have that traditional style English food, and you go up to the bar and order and then bring it back to your table. It's all very British and it's awesome. It's just like the coziness of them. Like, they're so, that's the word that you use. Like, there's a fireplace, there's candles. It just feels like you're in Lord of the Rings and you're in like a hobbit hole. Like,
Truly.
I love it.
Yeah.
And those kind of places are everywhere, but there's a couple that are just like above and beyond. You can't beat the Mayflower. You have to check out the Mayflower. I mean, that was like, when I was in there, I literally felt like I was about to get on the Mayflower. Like, it just felt so 16th century.
What was the hardest aspect of life in London?
It was definitely budgeting. London is a pretty expensive city. If you're planning a trip there, there's gonna be a lot of things that you wanna do. You're gonna kind of get FOMO because there's just like endless opportunity of things that you can do. A lot of it's really exciting, but when you look at the price tag, it's like, oh, okay, can I do this and this at the same time? It's interesting, like, actually living there rather than like just being there for a trip, because there were a lot of nights when we had to cook. There were a lot of nights when we just kind of had to eat in and then just kind of stagger everything that was expensive, so we just didn't have weeks that was like back to back to back. I definitely think that if you plan it out, it's an avoidable hurdle. You want to make sure that you're doing everything that you want to do and really experiencing London the way that you want to. Things are gonna be expensive. I mean, it's a place that people are coming to from all over the world. They have the ability to raise prices on certain things. It's certainly not a reason not to go to London. It's just something to be aware of.
There's always a new restaurant to try. There's always a new bar to check out. So just knowing when and where to do those things was definitely the most difficult. What area did you gravitate to? We were staying in the Whitechapel neighborhood, which is situated in East London. And before we even got to London, we knew that we wanted to be in the Shoreditch High Street area. So we knew kind of from the beginning we were gonna be in that area most of the time because we were gonna be living there.
So we did spend quite a lot of time in the East London area, going to Spitalfields, the Liverpool Street area, Finsbury, Shoreditch. There's just a lot to see over there, so it's not like we were going to the same places. We were just kind of going to the same areas, and when we go to certain places, we'd say, oh, that place looks cool, maybe we'll check it out on the next time. And it was just nice to be able to walk to those places, even though we did have a train stop right next to us. A lot of the places that we were mentioning were just walking distance from the Airbnb, so if we were going out for a coffee or breakfast, or even like when we were done with everything during the day and we were going out for dinner and drinks, it was just a nice aspect to just be able to walk right out the door and get there on foot. So I would definitely say that we gravitated towards that area. It was also the fact that like it's just a little different from like the main central London area, and I'm glad that we had that Airbnb. I think we were really fortunate with the location of it. So what's cool about Shoreditch is that it's a little bit more of a trendy neighborhood. People that are going there are usually the people that actually live in the city. It was a place of the city that we could go to where we could get like different food every time we went there, a different vibe for the bars or pubs we were looking for. The prices are somewhat comparable to the rest of the city, maybe a little bit cheaper than what you're going to see in central London.
And how would you rate the public transportation?
Oh my god, it was immaculate. It was a miracle. It was a miracle of modern engineering. It was a 15 out of 10. And I think the reason that we were so impressed with it is because we come from the US, which the US is the land of terrible public transportation that breaks down and is dirty and is sometimes dangerous if you get on at a certain time of day. So I mean, I really think that just having something in our lives where we could depend upon it to get anywhere you need every single day. And we did a lot of running around, obviously, because we wanted to explore all these different neighborhoods. So it was just vital to what we were doing. I loved being in a place that had something like that. It was just like all the different modes of transportation. Like you had the underground trains, you had the overground trains, you had the DLR, the Dockland Light Rail. You had the buses, which we were talking about before. You had a boat. So if you're going to like those touristy areas that are right on the river, you can just take a boat on the way there. So they've literally thought of every mode of transportation to get people around. We never even took a black cab. We never took a taxi because it just didn't seem necessary. The public transportation was a lot cheaper and honestly a lot faster. Also have Uber in the city, so it's just a very accessible city. And I was so amazed with how that infrastructure for all of those trains and buses and everything, how that changes how you can use a city. The city becomes just so much more accessible. US, we gotta get on it. It's gotta happen soon because it changes a city, and it's vital to a city like London. I'm excited to explore the other ones that we're gonna see on this trip, but it's gonna be hard to beat London.
We were pretty spoiled because the District line, the Hammersmith and City line, and the Circle line all stopped at our Whitechapel station.
Yeah,
and these
awesome.
trains are bigger, they're cleaner, they're just a bit more comfortable than what you would see on like the Northern train, the Piccadilly line. Some of those older cars are a little loud, so we were very fortunate to pick an Airbnb that we didn't even know we were going to be on those lines. Which 3 museums would you recommend?
Well, I would definitely make sure that the free ones, except for maybe the Churchill War Rooms, that is one that I'm okay with paying for. If you can get to some of the free ones, the British Museum is free. The British Museum is huge. It's absolutely gigantic, so definitely plan for a couple hours there. They literally have artifacts from all 7 continents. I think I would also say the Tate Modern. It's modern art, so a lot of it's just kind of like open to interpretation and just a little more out there. One of the coolest things is like when you walk into the lobby, there's like this big descending ramp that you go down when you get to the ticket takers, and the whole time you see these floating objects in the distance, and you get closer and closer down the ramp, and then you look at them and go, oh, those are jellyfish. So they make like these robotic jellyfish that are floating around with propellers, like their legs are kind of like going up and down like this. We spent like 10 or 15 minutes just kind of looking at those before we went in.
It was the star of the show.
It was honestly the start of the show. I hate to say it. Like the rest of the museum's pretty cool, but you walk in there, you see those jellyfish. It's awesome, and it's free.
What was your favorite meal?
Oh my goodness.
This one's an easy one for me. So my favorite meal was Pizza East in Shoreditch.
Oh yeah.
I'm a sucker for a nice wood fire Neapolitan margarita pizza, and that one I had there was absolutely divine. We also got a side of mac and cheese because we were told we had to try it, and you could tell it was cooked in a cast iron skillet that had been put in the wood fire, so it had like perfect like consistency on the top of the crust.
It's like so crispy, like right on top of the noodles.
Yes, and then once you dug in, it was creamy and rich in the center. So I love Pizza East. I got a t-shirt from there.
The t-shirt.
I cannot wait to go back one day.
Like overall, I was really impressed with the pizza culture in London. It was something that I didn't really know too much about. Like you think about like Chicago and New York as the pizza cities, but London's awesome. I mean, it's mostly like Neapolitan style, so it's the wood fire that they take out with like one of those big pizza kettles, and it's just kind of like the simplicity of the pizza. Like you have the sauce, you have the dough, and then you have like mozzarella cheese and basil, like the margarita style. It was definitely like simplicity is king, and I feel like in the US we just try to pile on as many toppings as we can to a pizza. So it was a nice like change of pace to get like that simplicity. You'd maybe have some pepperoni on it, but that's about it. And it wasn't just Shoreditch, like a lot of different pizza places around were really, really good. And I was impressed. I guess it makes sense because it's a lot closer to Italy, so you probably have people that come there and have like recipes in their family or whatever and just start a pizza place. But that was an aspect of London food culture that I was not expecting at all.
Another good pizza place in Shoreditch would be Pizza Pilgrims. So if you're in the area, you should check that out too.
It's hard to like narrow it down because we just had so many good ones. I would say Circolo Popolare. It was like an Italian restaurant in Soho that we went to. They had this carbonara that like, served for 2 people, so we got it. And it was just so good, so creamy, so cheesy. I really, really enjoyed that. The Sunday roasts that we had both at the Mayflower and at the Prospect of Whitby were so good. Like the gravy on top of this roasted meat, the duck fat fried potatoes. That was probably the most traditional British thing that we got, besides like the fish and chips a couple times. But yeah, I would definitely say Circolo Popolare as far as like a main meal. Pizza East is hard to beat though.
Okay, last question. What makes London unique?
I think it's just the fact that it is London and you can't really compare it to any other city. It's got that vibe to it that you expect before you go, but then there's also this whole added layer of things that you wouldn't expect. So when you're walking around, you're gonna get the red telephone booths, you're gonna see the Union Jack everywhere. When you see Big Ben for the first time, it's like a very cool thing. They lean into that like, okay, this is London and this is the London that people know, even people that haven't even been here. But then on top of that, when you get to see like all the markets and all the different cultures that are represented in the city, all these cool views you're going to get on the river of the skyline. It is a one-of-a-kind city, so that is literally the definition of unique. It's hard to compare any other city to London. And I think also, especially as Americans, like it was cool to kind of see buildings that have been there for so long, longer than our country, because like if you go to Boston and Philly and like some of our oldest cities, yeah, that's some cool history, but it's nothing compared to some of these places. Like we were mentioning with Rotherhithe, the cobblestone streets, the oil lamps. When you see the Tower of London that's been there since 1066, to see that kind of history juxtaposed with all of the new modern architecture, because London is like this financial hub too. So it is London. It knows who it is and it really leans into that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure that you do that so you don't miss any of our new videos that come out. If you know anyone who you think might be interested in this, make sure that you're sharing it. We're trying to get this to as many people as we can so we can continue these travels as long as we can. We're going to a completely new place because we kind of talked about how in London we were on easy mode of travel. Like we were speaking the language before we got there. We knew that, we kind of knew the layout of the city, or at least had an idea of the layout of the city. So it was a good way to ease in, but now we're going to get way out of our comfort zone and go to a place that we've never been to before, that we don't know anyone that's ever been there before. It's going to be a completely new experience, and you're going to see all of that right here on the channel. New city, new country, completely new content. I can't wait to get started, and thank you so much to everyone who has followed our journey so far. There's plenty more to come, and we can't wait to bring it to you.